So you got it in your head, you want to camouflage your rifle scope. Really? That's alright, Uncle Bang Pew does not judge around here. Camouflaging a rifle scope is a really good way to help it integrate with your rifle if you've already camouflaged it or it's already wearing subdued camouflage factory colors like this one is, the Ruger American I had before me. OD green with a little bit of burnt bronze on the barrel, but the big old black thing on top sticks out. And we can't have that. When it comes to camouflaging your rifle scopes, there's some things to consider we're gonna cover today. I'm gonna show you some techniques. I'm gonna show you how I personally do it because it's not as easy as camouflaging a rifle can be itself. You can't bake the parts. It's really, really bad for scopes and the things going on inside of them, all the little wizardry in there, to put them in an oven and bake them. Would not recommend it. So there's two options you can do with this. If you wanna camouflage your rifle scope, you can paint it, good old fashioned rattle can, Duracoat, Cerakote, that kind of thing, or you can wrap it with some of this Gear Aid tape, all the different parts and pieces. That's the simplest answer, but it's not my favorite. I actually use a combination of both going forward. I like to base coat my scopes to match or get close to matching the rifle because it just looks better overall as a package, I think, for me personally. And this is coming from kind of a tactical perspective or more of a hunting slash, field use perspective than if you just need it for ranges or you need it for F-class or whatever like that. You don't really need to camouflage a rifle scope if you're shooting PRS or a game like that, but it does look cool. So using a combination of both paint and multicam tape, you can come up with a really cool effect for your rifle scope like this one you see right here, that really does a good job of not only blending it in with its environment, but breaking up the outline and making it just look cooler. So before we get into the technical aspects of actually how to do this, I'm gonna talk about some of the considerations to go when you're going into this. First of all, you wanna cover your lenses when you paint, if you do paint. Definitely cover the lenses. You don't wanna paint those. These parts right here, here and here, you don't wanna paint that. Mechanically, I think it's more sound if you paint after you've mounted your rifle scope. So you've already got it mounted to the rifle, you've got it in the rings it's gonna be in, you've got it set, linked to your headspace and all that good stuff set, it's paralleled and it's actually zeroed. So I don't paint my rifle scopes usually until I have them mounted at the very least and usually zeroed. The zeroing you're gonna have to redo anyway, but getting it pretty close to where you want it to be on the rifle with the load you're gonna be shooting is always a good thing because you can go back and kind of tweak that zero after you're done and you remount your scope. But I definitely want it in the rings, mounted and ready to go. I don't want paint inside the ring. Another thing to consider, are you gonna be doing an overall paint job on the rifle? If so, and you want the scope to match that, you need to decide whether you're going to paint the scope actually on the rifle or off the rifle. Personally, I base coat them off the rifle so that I can get full coverage all the way around the parts of the scope that I want to paint, get a nice uniform base on there, then I'll put it and remount it on the rifle and do an overall camouflage paint scheme for the whole rifle, if that's the way I'm gonna go with it. Sometimes I'll just do a flat color on the scope, so I'll paint that off the rifle, flat color it, put it back on the rifle after it's cured, and then maybe wrap it with my tape or just leave it as is if I just have kind of a base tone color scheme going on, which is what I'm gonna do with this rifle. OD green straight up for the scope itself, and then if I want pattern later, I can always add some tape. All right, zoom in here with me and let's talk about how to prep this thing for painting. The things you need to keep in mind are not covering up the important parts. Where you have numbers right here, like on your adjustment ring for your power adjustment, I like to cover those up as, to keep those so I can see them, obviously. I like to cover this outside ring up here, the ocular ring, plus the actual lens itself, and then the front lens and stuff like that. So let me show you how to do that. Also, you want to keep in mind, do not cover up if you have target style turrets, you really don't want to cover up these numbers because you're going to need them later when you get to actually shooting. And again, on the side over here, parallax adjustment, I like to cover that as well. If you have scoped cap turrets, like capped scope turrets like this, you can just put these bad boys on there and paint those things straight up. That's nice if you have it. If you don't have it, you have target style turrets, you're gonna have to tape off and cover up some of this stuff. Okay, I'm gonna do as much of the prep work while I'm actually on the rifle as I can. I like to start out with the blue painter's tape. This is, I think, 3/4 inch blue painter's tape. It fits a lot of the scope caps. This one, it fits pretty much perfectly. So I'm just gonna wrap a simple piece around that to cover that up. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just wanna cover the basics. Make sure your numbers are covered. I'm gonna go ahead and leave that one covered, the wind digit knob there. I have an actual cap cover for it, so I'm gonna leave that covered. I do want a little bit of paint on this portion right here, just because it kind of breaks up the top outline, but I don't want any on the top where I have my markers for my milliradian turns and directions, because that gives me a little bit of information on the top of my scope for covering, or for actually making adjustments, and it's nice to have that reference there. So I'm just gonna put a piece of tape up there, square across the top to cover that. I've got my ring over here, my actual parallax ring over here. So what I'm gonna do is take a piece of tape, put it down on the thing here, and then I'm gonna cut a thin piece of this tape off the strip, like this, just a thin piece of tape off the strip, and fit it in that tiny spot there where the parallax knob is. Around that, cover up those numbers. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. This is just kind of a rough process to cover these things. Gonna need another thin piece of tape right there. And if you have portions and parts of it that you don't want covered specifically, like your names and numbers and all that good stuff, like the actual logos of the Riflescope, you can cover that as well. Just paint that. Getting paint down into the cracks and crevices of your joints here, where your turning knobs and adjustments reside, I haven't ever really noticed a negative effect with that, so I don't bother trying to cover up these little gaps here, because I've really never had a problem. When it comes to the front lens, I like to run the plate or the paint all the way to the end of the front lens. So what I'll do is I actually take some tissue, get the softest kind you can or whatever, and stuff it in there like this, so that I know that my lens is fully covered. And then I'm going to take a flat piece, or a piece of tape, and I'm going to put it flat like this, just against the bezel there, and I can run another piece around it if I need to, or top, to cover that full bell, you know, the full portion of the interior there. There we go, just like that. And then if you'd like to, you can take a razor blade and just cut the excess off of that. So just kind of trace around that lens body there and cut off all that excess once you've got it good and taped down. You could also just run a simple piece of tape around this as well. So let me show you the second method. And this second method works pretty good too. You just end up with a little black ring on the front of your scope body. So you take the tape, you get as close to the edge as you can, and you run it as evenly as you can, unless you want it to be jagged, around the edge here like that, making sure this is really, really good and pushed down around this edge, because you don't want any overspray getting in there. And then you can crumple that front portion down into the actual lens, collapse it on itself, and maybe pop another piece of tape over the front of it. So we're going to use that method for this go. Just make sure this is good and sealed up in here, and there's nothing, no chance of overspray getting in there, even though we've got, you know, pretty much stuffed coverage in there with our, you know, our tissue. Backside, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to run a piece of tissue here, but we have the lens coming out further than the back of the ocular there. So what I'm going to do first, I'm going to get my tape, which I run all the way up to the body. So the full adjustment of that ocular lens I want to be covered, however far it's sticking out, because I don't want any tape or paint on this interior portion of the ocular adjustment in the back, in case I need to run it in or out. It's just not a good idea to get paint in there, so let's cover that whole thing up. Take our tissue, stuff it down in there and cover the lens as best we can, and then collapse this on itself, and then we'll run another piece of tape over top of that. And that about does it, other than covering up the logos if you want to. If you want to actually maintain your logos, you could cover those up as well, but I think I'm going to go ahead and paint these ones. Got all the importance covered: lenses, numbers, and knobs covered up, and we're ready to go. Let's get this thing off the rifle. Paint this sucker. All right, a little bit of common sense goes a long way. You're going to want to be in a well-ventilated area when you do this. Light passes on the first go. It's just the base coat, so we're just going to get it on there. Let me turn on my respirator and my air filter. And now we get to wait 3 to 7 days. So hang it somewhere warm and dry, and nobody will mess with it. And be patient. Actually, you don't really have to wait 3 to 7 days to put it back on your rifle. Within an hour, it's pretty much well tacked up, and within 24 hours, you can touch it. So after about 24 hours, you can put the scope back on your rifle, and then you could continue painting after the full cure time has elapsed for the Brownell's Alumahide. Now the Brownell's Alumahide, if you're not baking it, which I would not recommend baking a scope in any capacity, then you have to wait 7 days for it to fully cure before you can paint another coat, or you can put the pattern coats on or whatever. If it's regular Krylon type of stuff or whatever you get from the local hardware store, it's usually gonna be dry within a couple hours and you can slap it back on your rifle. The Alumahide takes a lot longer, I know that, but I like the overall result I get better with it because it's a tougher finish that will last a lot longer. It's very similar to something like Cerakote or Duracoat in that it's gonna last for many, many years, and it's very hard wearing. Though it does take a lot more time to dry. And bam, just like that, you're basically a sniper right there. Follow me for more tips on how to be cool. All right, after a long, tedious 3 to 4 to 5 to 7 day wait, which I only actually waited like 24 hours to be honest. Riflescope is back on the rifle. OD green matches a little bit better, I think. Going from here forward, if you wanted to put some patterning on it, this is where I would do it with your rifle all in one. You've got everything covered all the way around. The glass has not been painted. That's cool. The turrets are still visible. My numbers are still visible. And now it's all about patterning. What do you want to do with it? You could wrap it, take a little bit of the old, put some of that on there and make it camouflaged, or whatever you're gonna do to match your rifle. That's basically it in a nutshell. It's the way I do it. How you do it may vary, and really depends on personal preference. Turned out pretty sweet though. I don't mind it that way. That's not too bad. That's a decent look. A little bit of splatter paint maybe from the trying to match the stock here. Maybe I could throw some splatter in there. I don't know. Overall, I think it looks good. Ready to go out there and slay some varmints. All right, that's all I got for today. Thank y'all for joining me again. Real quick tutorial on how to paint a rifle scope. It ain't complicated. Just don't ever, ever, ever put it in the oven. That's my biggest piece of advice. Don't put it in the oven. One quick tip though. You can actually sun bake this stuff, the Brownell's Alumahide. If you put it in a sunny spot and turn it around occasionally, like a rotisserie chicken, you can actually get this stuff to cure pretty quickly, within 24 hours or so. Of course, obviously, it doesn't work at night, but during the day, put it out in a sunny spot, let it bake a couple minutes on each side, flip it around every hour or so, whatever, and it will actually help cure this Brownell's Alumahide a little bit quicker. Whether or not it messes with the color fastness of the actual tones of the color, who knows? No clue, no idea whatsoever. Perform the experiment yourself if you like to. All right, if y'all enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, share, all those good things. You know how the internet works. Y'all get out there, be blessed, happy shooting, and stay sharp.